Just about every speaker today has spoken about and has connected with the fact that the world today is changing. The world that we inherited is not the same as the one, or the world that we inherited today is not the same as the one that our parents grew up in. So one of the challenges that we faced and that we're having to engage with in this changing world, particularly for those of us who are Generation X's or baby boomers, is that we are looking at today's young talent coming into our world, coming into our organizations, and are being smacked around the head with flip. These young men and women aren't just little versions of me. And the conversations that we had over the last 10 years kind of got us to the point where that was what we thought we'd be able to do, and all we'd have to do when we headed into management as Gen Xers is just do the things that we wanted baby boomers to do for us. If we do those for the next cohort of young people coming through, then everything will be hunky-dory. But the reality is that millennial talent coming into organizations today are looking at us and saying, what the heck are you smoking? There's no way that that's going to work for me. And so one of the pains, one of these disruptive things that's coming through and turning our world on its head is the fact that today's young talent just doesn't play by the same rules that we did and doesn't look at us and want to do things the same way that we have. So I want to just give you a little story quickly, just to give you a tool that you can connect with and use to go back in your organization as you want to work with young men and women. And it's a story around two farmers. So these are both sheep farmers, and the one sheep farmer is in the Karoo. And many of us have driven to Cape Town, and you drive down the N1, and there are just hundreds of kilometers of fencing laid up around those sheep farms. And what's the reason for the fences? Well, the sheep farmer uses the fences to keep his sheep in place and to manage his grazing. So that in a desert, we don't get to a place where there's nothing left for the sheep to eat. But here's what ends up happening, is that for many of the sheep farmers in the Karoo, their fences become their single biggest capital expense. And without making the conscious decision, many of them just end up spending more time managing their fences than they do managing their sheep. In the Aussie Outback, also a world-famous area for sheep, also a semi-arid desert region, an Aussie sheep rancher doesn't string up fences. What an Aussie rancher does is they sink wells. Because what they know about sheep is that if I sink a well in a desert, even though sheep have got a very limited intelligence, they're not going to be able to wander too far away from that well before they're not going to turn around and say, I'm going to come back because if I'm thirsty, I need to be able to get back to water. If you want to connect with your young talents in your organizations and in the world today, we need to be looking for our wells. What are the wells in your organization, in your industry, in your world that will be making you an employer of talent, an attractor of talent, and getting people to come and say, if I'm going to go and work in a world, that's where I want to go and work. Instead, what you've almost defaulted into is a world of policies, procedures, rules, and even if you gold plate your fences, they're still fences. And what do we see if we drive through the Karoo and we go past a sheep farm? Do we see the sheep enjoying all the lush green grass in the middle of the paddock? We see sheep, just like people, right up against the rules, right up against the fence, cramming their neck through, trying to get to that one blade of grass on the other side that's out of reach. If you're trying to manage and connect with your talent using policies, procedures, and rules, you're going to miss them. In the keynote that we look at around talent, there are a whole number of other topics that we'll deal with. Very practical things that will help you to understand how and why these young men and women see the world the way that they do, and then bring it back to your business. What are some key tools, some key perspectives, some very useful frameworks for you to use as you need to manage and lead the millennial generation? And ultimately, what it boils down to is this. If I were to say to you, is this a pile of garbage or is this a picture of a man? Depending on your perspective and the point at which you stand and look, you would have two very, very different answers. And when it comes to dealing with young talent today, it's not about right or wrong. It's not about who's good or bad. What we have to realize is that we all just have different perspectives of what works. And when you get your perspective working, you'll be able to connect with your talent. If you work with young people, if you live in a digital world, we need to chat. Get hold of Paul and them and say, please, can we talk to the bald guy in the blue jacket?